that world is moving, 'cause there's iron in my heart. And I just can't keep from crying, 'cause you say we've got to part. And sorrow grips my voice as I stand here all alone and watch you slowly take away a love I've never known. I was born without you, baby, but my feelings were a little bit too strong. So today, Tony Iommi, kind of solo style, right? So we'll talk about that. I did get a new webcam, so tomorrow I'll probably make another video. So that's why it looks, pretty good here. So, Tony Iommi solos, everybody wants to know this. This may be an ongoing series. See, like I said, I might just do videos like this, so where it's just kind of like, you know what I mean? Kind of like this without showing my face. I'm not sure yet. So, in that case, this could continue. So, this is the first one. So, anyway, Tony Iommi, remember that Black Sabbath was basically, I was going to say is, but basically a band that came from, heavy blues, right? So, heavy blues. So, I think in the next video, if I do another one, I'll talk about, the blues history and where this stuff comes from, maybe, But basically what this is that there's a lot of, especially the early stuff, it's just straight up just heavy blues. So obviously, we're going to talk about the pentatonic again. And the pentatonic is just, the go-to scale because it's 5 notes that fits over a lot of chord progressions. So again, the pentatonic, it kind of looks like a K in the 12th position, right? 12th position is the 2 dots. It looks like a K, right? And it's like this. Right? So everything that I played, the solos that I played, is basically just the same thing. It's just those notes. So it's not the notes that you play. It's not the, the scale that you play. It's how you phrase it. So that's the whole thing about blues. This is what technical players, the 80s technical players, they don't understand. They think that it's just about, just playing as many notes as possible. So this is about blues phrasing. So where you start with this is that you start with the blues players, right? You start with blues players. You start with, and there's a lot of videos on YouTube, but they're not metal oriented because there's a whole community of just blues players, and then like Stevie Ray Vaughan, that kind of stuff, and they all kind of sound the same. So the whole thing with the blues is that, and a lot of this applies to Faceted Clark. I talked about this with Faceted Clark already. Same sort of thing. So you have the box pattern. Box pattern means that this is the root of it. Right? If I move it 2 frets down, now this becomes the root of it. So this note right here is the root of it for this box pattern. And really, for in the beginning, that's all you need to know. So all the solos that I played today, it's just a 1 box pattern. That's it. All that is just those notes rearranged in a way that it makes sense. So this is what we call phrasing in blues. So if you want to play like Iommi, you have to basically get a good handle on blues playing. It's completely different than 80s playing. It's completely different than the way that, although a lot of that stuff, obviously everything starts with the blues, right? Although a lot of the stuff, even Randy Rhoads, starts with pentatonic, as we talked about before, they do licks like this, right? But in the 80s, it became more technical. So this is kind of like a throwback to original blues. The British blues, a lot of bands are sounding like this, right? Blue Cheer, a lot of these bands. So they're all just basically, just take the pentatonic. So if you're an advanced player, basically the E minor pentatonic across the whole fretboard. It's just the same 5 notes repeated everywhere. So you could play it all right here, or you could move this around. I'm actually tuned to C sharp, I didn't want to tune up, to E. The original song is in E, but this is tuned to C sharp. As you know, the song is Warning off the first album. So that's all. That's the first thing, is that just get an idea for this. Right? Understand that. Like I said, it looks like a K. It looks like, somebody drew a K right there. That's the way I kind of think about it. If you move it over here, then it's in the 5th position. If this was tuned to E, it would be A minor pentatonic, right? So here I'm on C sharp, but I'm just going to call it, I don't know what to call that. If I call it C sharp, then it'll get confusing. So imagine this is the E guitar, so it would just be E minor pentatonic, right? For anything that's, played on this string. Any song that's on there. So blues phrasing is what we want. And you have to listen to, old black musicians, because a lot of these blues licks come from as far as the plantation. So I already talked about this with Fast Eddie Clarke. If I do a second episode with Tony Iommi, I will do that. So this is how he started. And then, of course, he kind of, improved, his playing even more. And then as the albums progressed, he got, you know what I mean? He got more prolific with the solos. So, but the beginning part of it, it's just straight up blues. So again, this is just the same notes. So it's not the notes. This is so important, I have to repeat it. It's not the notes. Because some people will say, don't learn the pentatonic, it's stupid. It's, and that's what 90% of the music is based on. Right? Most of the stuff is based on pentatonic. So it's just sort of a kind of a roadmap. So then you have blues licks. This lick right here, that's as old as dirt, dude. That goes back all the way to the plantation. You've heard this lick everywhere. Motorhead, you've heard this lick in Motorhead. So a lick is a phrase of music like this. Right? It's a phrase of music. In the blues, you basically, we talked about all this before, right? In the blues, what you do is you have these licks that you can put in your own solo. When you hear that, that's as old as dirt. Trust me. That's been around since, Robert Johnson, Muddy Waters, before then even. So, right, each blues player will come up with his own kind of licks. So that is a lick. So a solo is a collection of licks. And then you make up your own. You use, like I said before, something blues, something borrowed, something new, right? It's an old saying. I think in England that saying means something different. They use it in a wedding. But in the sense of the blues, that means that something borrowed, old as dirt, right? And then something new, maybe something like what Iommi did, right? So he used these notes to create music. So, and then, like I said, something blue, well, it sounds very bluesy. So that's all this is. But it's not as easy as it seems, because you have to put it together in a way that it makes sense, right? And like I said, we can go back to this now again. And then he goes straight to, right? That lick that I just showed you. The one that's old as dirt. And the whole thing about blues is basically just bends. And you have to get good at bending. So if you're like a shredding type player, you probably don't even know how to bend properly, right? So when you bend, like we talked about with Fast Eddie Clarke, the skin on the tip of your fingers will start to peel. And then you have to develop these thick calluses. So you have to bend this properly. Yngwie talked about this to where if you bend improperly, then you're off key. So if you want to play in tune, you have to bend properly. Right? So you have to get that down first. Half bends and full bends, right? So that's as old as dirt. And all that is just a descending. So if you can't wrap your mind around this, you probably don't know how to phrase in blues. So I have go to the faceted Clark lessons. We talked about this a lot. So you should get a feel for just blues phrasing using this scale, using the notes in the scale. Right? This is all Tony Iommi stuff from the Warning. So of course he doesn't stop right there. I can't, learn all the stuff because I didn't want to copy Tony Iommi. But you can, if you look at the tab for Warning, there's all kinds of stuff just like this, right? And then just using that pattern, just whatever you can come up with. But then you got to put it together in a way it's interesting, and then it's moving. So that is the genius of Iommi, is that he's able to take these licks that existed before him, then add to it. So, yeah, just kind of practice that. That's all. I just wanted to talk about it. Not that I'm, like I said, my history. I'm not a guitar player. I'm a singer. But when I get to do stuff with Hill God, I might put a solo like that because I play everything on there. If we do like a bluesy kind of track. So Sabbath really started off as a heavy blues band. And then it's just kind of, progressed from there. All right? So the summary of this lesson is basically the box pattern. The idea of blues phrasing, which you're not going to learn entirely from Black Sabbath alone, so I advise that you kind of go off in a, kind of a separate study, and then learn from black musicians, the old black musicians, and you kind of listen to a lot of blues, and then you learn it. You'll hear bits and pieces of all these licks in there. Remember, I said a lick is a piece of music, right? That is a lick, right? So, and then learn from there. Then you come back to this, then it'll make sense. Because if you try to take all of Black Sabbath in, it's too much. Because he's already mastered all the stuff that I'm telling you. So, you see how we put it all together, right? Then it's like too much. You can't comprehend it. So you have to sort of step back a little bit and then kind of go back to, oh shit, it's getting dark here. All right, I better wrap this up. So you have to sort of go back and look at his influences, and then see what people like maybe Robert Johnson, Muddy Waters, and then later Hendrix, right? All these people came before Tony, and then get a feel for that. Like these are all the notes. If you play them by themselves, it's kind of dumb, right? But you've got to phrase it, and you got to phrase it within the the timing of the song. And that seems it's like all he's doing is this. All he's doing is just descending on those notes, but it's tastefully done. This is what we call a tasty lick, right? A tasty lick is something that's tasty, that makes you feel something. That's a blues, lingo, right? Then, of course, there's vibrato. Each blues player will have its own vibrato. Listen to like B.B. King and, that kind of stuff, right? And then kind of get a feel for it. So it's like pentatonic, minor pentatonic, vibrato, and then bends. Most important thing. And that whole song is just, full of these, cool blues licks. Anyway, that's it for this one. This is just kind of an introduction. I don't know how much more we can do because most of his stuff is that's it. Right? And then you can just sort of go from there. There may be a couple more lessons in there. It's really how he puts it all together. And that can't really be taught. This is more of the theory towards it's like, oh, wait, how is he getting it from? Well, he's getting it from, a lot of the blues players that he probably listened to. All right?